I recently discovered haptics or transducers, base shakers, whatever you want to call it, for your sim racing rig. And after watching some videos and doing some research, I decided I wanted to go ahead and jump right into it. And here's my experience with it. I put together a list of gear and materials I would need, and that started with a Windows PC to run the software that will run the haptics. I used a Mac Mini because I had one. Bought this knob sound card slash power amp and some miscellaneous stuff I needed here, some Velcro, a little extension cable for the power amp, and a USB extension. So here's my rig, kind of moving it into place, flip it over so that we can get some of the hardware installed. At this point, I was waiting on the transducers to come in, but I was anxious to get this thing going. So I started with the knob sound power amp. It's a very cheap Class D power amp, and so far so good. It also has the advantage of it being a built-in sound card. So instead of running analog cables from a separate sound card, it's all in one. So this allowed me to add only 2 extra cables to the rig, which was important to me because I like to keep this thing clean and keep the cables hidden. So I found a good spot for the knob sound card slash power amp. I used some 3M dual lock tape and put that guy into place. And then I'm going to backtrack here a little bit. I did make a DC extension cable so that it could plug into the power amp that was mounted on the rig and just have a tail coming out that would then tie into the power supply for the power amp. So I got out my $7 Amazon soldering iron that I originally bought to turn into a smoke machine to try to track down vacuum leaks on my car, but that never happened, and now I've used this $7 soldering iron a bunch of times. Okay, so that's all together. A little cable management here with some zip ties to get this all clean, and then you'll see that really the only thing hanging off of the rig now is going to be those 2 cables for the haptics, and then on the other side of the rig is the 1 USB cable coming off for the Fanatec wheel and pedals. I ran the power supply and a USB extension cable together and zip tied those together, so those are going to be the connections for haptics. And then Amazon arrived and delivered the 2 transducers. I bought the Dayton Audio BST2s. The BST1s are super popular, but these are a little smaller, a little cheaper, and for what I was doing, I thought I would gamble and go just a little bit cheaper. So the power amp was about $30, I think. I think I got an Amazon warehouse deal. These were like 36 a piece. So basically for about $100 all in now for the power amp and the transducers, we're in pretty good shape. So a little unboxing for you. They're pretty beefy, and they've got the speaker wire already attached, which I did not realize. For the front, it ends up being plenty of speaker wire. For the back, I did have to extend. But there you go. Dayton Audio. They have a very good reputation, and so far I'm happy with them. So I decided to go with a front-rear setup. So the front is going to attach directly under my pedal tray. I did have to drill some holes, and I had to actually enlarge the holes in the transducers to get this all to work with the fasteners I had. Really didn't take much time and made it a very, very solid connection. They're I think M6 bolts, and I've got those feeding from the top. They're Allen head from the top. They are chrome. Black would be better, but I had what I had. I may swap those out later. We'll see. So just tightening it all down. I did crank on this pretty hard. I did not, because of the nature of it vibrating, I didn't want it to vibrate itself loose. So there's that speaker wire that's coming off the front transducer. We're going to strip those wires, and then we're going to feed it directly to the knob sound power amp. Twist the copper, keep it all nice and clean, and back those little screws off, and there's a little hole inside. If you do this, you'll see it. It's very obvious, not tricky at all. You can also use a banana plug and just plug them directly in, but I liked this method. Seems a little more secure, and one less thing to deal with. It is a little tedious and awkward, but once you're in there, it's going to happen once, and that's it. So now moving on to the rear, I just kind of test fit the transducer. This is the bottom of the seat. The Placey Trophy rig does not have a legitimate seat. It's really just like a fabric piece that Velcro, kind of a sling. So there is no rigid surface. I decided I'm going to make a rigid surface. So I grabbed a very old cutting board, plastic cutting board I had that seemed to be the right size, and sacrificed it. Used some sheet metal screws I had laying around, and just sent all 4 of those into the cutting board, tightened it all up, and yeah, it seemed like that would be a good idea. So now we're gonna run some temporary speaker wire, temporary cable management here. I did extend to the speaker wires here and get it up to that amp. And then I had to deal with how I could really make this thing stay under the seat. So what I ended up doing was making another slot similar to like the handle that was already there, and then using a Dremel, cutting that out. So basically just mirroring the slot from the other side, which allowed me to run a nice Velcro strap all the way through there and around the metal frame. And this worked out super well. It is nice and solid. The only thing is that Velcro can kind of slip over the transducer, but overall this worked out really well. Then I found a little hole here in the frame, and I got to thinking, if you go back and look at my cable management video from how I did the DD Pro, I decided let's run that speaker wire through the frame. I don't want to be taping anything to the outside of the frame. And there's my kid walking out the door going probably to Taco Bell. So I had to split this rig in half, which isn't too bad. This is the Placey Trophy, and I really, really like this rig. It is fairly lightweight, although it's getting pretty heavy with a direct drive wheel and 2 transducers and a power amp and the power supply and blah, blah, blah. But it's not too bad. Still, for an old man, I could still actually manage it, swing it around. So doing a little cable management here, feeding a cable back up through, and then taping the speaker wire from the rear transducer, and then we're going to pull that back through the frame. Struggled with this a little bit just to get everything to fit, and honestly I probably could have gone with a little bit of a thinner speaker wire gauge, but it all worked out here as we patiently watch me use the electrical tape, and then pull that speaker wire through, and then have to kind of manhandle the back of the rig and get it up closer so it can take up that length. And once we get that speaker wire to come all the way through, then we're gonna just run it directly over to the power amp as I struggle to balance this all. And there we go. We got it through, and now I can put the rig back together and just slide it all in there. Then those brackets go on, and really that's all I had to do is take off the 4 bolts that hold the 2 halves of the frame. So that was, if it's hard to tell from the orientation, you're looking at the pedal tray on the bottom of the screen, seat is on the top, we're looking at the bottom of the rig. Hopefully that's clear to you. Tighten up these brackets again, and then we're going to move on to finishing off the wiring, and then really the wiring will be complete here as I get everything tightened back up. Left side, right side, Allen heads, pretty straightforward. And then we've got just about the right amount of speaker wire. I did leave a little bit extra. And then again, you just unscrew these terminals. There's a hole going through the shaft. Stick the wire in there and then tighten those down. And kind of test fit here and decided let's just leave the extra. There's not too much, and one extra zip tie. You never hurt anybody, right? And then you just I prefer to twist those off with the pliers. So there you go. So now this is what it looks like when it's set up and it's time to plug in. I've got 4 cables. The USB cable, that's from the direct drive wheel. Then that is the IEC, the power cable that goes to the power supply. And then I've got the latest addition is the power to the power amp, DC power, and the USB that goes to the Mac Mini. Then I got real fancy. So I've got the Windows running on that Mac Mini. And the reason there are 2 Mac Minis is one is my Plex server running Mac OS. But I wanted to kind of just keep this a headless Windows machine. So I'm using Jump Desktop now to log into via VNC to the Mac Mini running Windows. If that sounds confusing, it kind of is, but it all worked out. So I'm controlling PC from my Mac laptop that is running Windows on a Mac Mini. If it sounds a little confusing, it kind of is, but it's not too bad. And it's what I had. So when you got an old Mac Mini laying around and you can throw the Windows software on there, why not? So don't mind me running into walls. So this is now me. I've got Simhub is loaded on the Windows machine. I'm viewing it via VNC on the Mac laptop. And now I'm just messing around with the effects in Simhub. There's plenty of videos out there that kind of show how that works, and maybe I can get into doing one if you guys all want. But it's fairly straightforward once you're in there. It recognizes the sound card, and then you have these different effects. So, for example, you have like road vibrations. You can dial in how loud you want the road vibrations. You can dial in how much of it you want to go to the front transducer, how much to the rear. You can control the frequency. And then there are even more details that like thresholds and different sort of curves, frequency curves. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. If you get in there and dig around, you can kind of see it. But you have a ton of control over all these different effects. I tried to just start with just a few effects. And really what I did is I just did one effect at a time to kind of just get a feel for things. To be honest, though, even after spending 20, 30 minutes doing it, it was like just enough to get a feel for, okay, I think I understand how this is going to work. But over the next couple weeks is where I really spent some more time fine-tuning and trying to split frequency ranges. So, for example, gear shift at a frequency of, let's say, 40 hertz, and then road vibrations at 52 hertz, just so that they have a different feel to them, which did really help. That's something that's still a work in progress. I also put some I just DIY'd some isolation pads. I took some rubber mat that I had laying around, put like 3 layers of that together. That's about a 1/4 inch thick each, and then zip tied that. I've got 2 of those on the back of the rig, and then on the front of the rig, I did 2 layers of it and zip tied or E-taped it to the front, just so that the rig is not in direct contact with the floor. I can tell you though, you can hear and feel if you've got it turned up pretty loud. Mine is not enough to sort of shake the whole house. And I am in a townhouse with a neighbor next door to that wall. But it's not bad. I don't think I'm disturbing anybody with it. But it is, if somebody was in the same room trying to read a book or something, it's going to bother them. But I will say, for me, where there's not typically somebody in the room reading a book, this has been just a total game changer, to overuse a phrase. Having the haptics on the rig has been just fantastic, especially when you have headphones on and you're really just feeling and not hearing much of that. Having that like force feedback, tactile feedback on the rig, and kind of for gear shift, which doesn't really give you more information, it just kind of adds to that immersion factor. But some of the wheel lock on the front, which I'm still dialing in, that is definitely a difference maker. So whether this gives you enough information to kind of improve your performance, for me, maybe, but it definitely makes the game more enjoyable, the rig more enjoyable. So if you're looking to get into this and you have the physical space and it works out for you in that regard. Like I said, I spent maybe about 100, maybe slightly over $100 to add 2 transducers and the power amp. The Windows PC, if you don't have that, that might be a hurdle for you. I was able to solve that with a Mac Mini that was sitting doing nothing. And yeah, that's about it. So I do highly recommend it if you have the ability to try it. It's something that I don't think I would be taking off this rig. I know, unlike when I tried PSVR 2 for the first time, and I thought it was an absolute game changer, I also knew there were some drawbacks to it and some hassles with it. And with this, other than the extra weight on the rig, which I think I calculated, I added about 10 pounds. I don't know what that is in kilograms. I don't know. You guys figure it out. But other than that, there's really no downside. It's super, super fun to play around with, and something that you can mess around in Simhub and keep dialing these things in until you lose your mind. That's it. If you have any questions on this stuff, just drop them in the comments below. As always, appreciate a like for the video, and its subscription helps the channel to grow, helps spread the videos to other people if you dig it and you think it's useful or entertaining. Appreciate you watching. Peace.